verse 27. The word of the Lord. And there were many in Israel with leprosy in the time of Elisha the prophet, yet not one of them was cleansed, only Naaman the Syrian. The word of the Lord.
I know Charlene read that, but who said that? Jesus was saying that. Yes, Charlene read it from part of what Jesus was saying to the people back in Nazareth. It didn't have a very good effect on them. When Jesus said that, they were reminded of something in their history. Something that we don't get because we don't have that history. We don't understand it. So that reminds me that I need to go back and look at the history. Why were the people so upset? Why were the Nazarenes so upset when Jesus said this to them? Who is this Naaman they were talking about? Now, some of you may have heard and know about Naaman, but not everybody does. And I forget about things. And so I thought, oh, I better go back and learn more about this history so I can understand what Jesus was talking about, why it was important. So I go back to 2 Kings. 2 Kings, starting in chapter 5, first 14 verses. Now Naaman was a commander of the army of the king Aram. And right away it was. Okay. Who's Aram? Well, a little bit more research. They're Syrians. Okay, so what? Syrians are the ones who conquered Israel. They're the enemy. Okay? Syrians are the enemy. And this is one of the kings in that evil empire. Now, Naaman was a commander of the army of one of those evil kings, Aram. He, Naaman, was a great man in the sight of his master and highly regarded, because through him the Lord had given victory to Aram. Now, wait a minute. The Lord gave victory to the Syrians. The enemy. Yeah. God was using the Syrians to teach a lesson to Israel. So God was using this evil empire for his good purposes, giving victory after victory to this Naaman. He, that is Naaman, was a valiant soldier, but he had leprosy. Ooh, yeah, leprosy. Now, not really sure what all of that means, but we know that it's a bad disease, right? Okay, so it's a bad disease. Even if we aren't completely familiar with what all there is to know about it, we know that's not something you want. It's a bad disease that is communicable. And that anybody who had leprosy had to isolate themselves from human contact. That was one of the laws that God gave the Israelites. Now, anybody who has leprosy has to be outside the camp. They can't be a part of. They have to be separated. And they can't come back until they have proven to the high priest that they're cured, if they ever get cured. Not a very curable disease, usually ended in death. Now, bands from Aram had gone out and taken captive a young girl from Israel, and she served Naaman's wife. She said to her mistress, "If only my master would see the prophet who is in Samaria." Now that's where this prophet called Elisha, not Elijah, Elisha lived, in Samaria. They weren't such enemies yet. He would cure him of his leprosy. Naaman went to his master and told him what the girl from Israel had said. By all means, go, the king of Aram replied. I will send a letter to the king of Israel. So Naaman left, taking with him 10 talents of silver, 6,000 shekels of gold, and 10 sets of clothing. A whole lot of stuff. A whole Walmart worth of stuff he's taken with him. The letter that he took to the king of Israel read, with this letter I am sending my servant Naaman to you so that you may cure him of his leprosy. Well, as soon as the king of Israel read the letter, he tore his robes and said, Am I God? Can I kill and bring back to life? Why does this fellow send someone to me to be cured of this leprosy? Ah, see, he is trying to pick a quarrel with me. When Elisha, the man of God, heard that the king of Israel had torn his robes, he sent him this message. Why have you torn your robes? Make the man come to me, and he will know that there is a prophet in Israel. So Naaman went with his horses and chariots and stopped at the door of Elisha's house. Elisha sent a messenger to say to him, Go, wash yourself 7 times in the Jordan, and your flesh will be restored, and you will be cleansed. Naaman went away angry and said, I thought he would surely come out to me and stand and call on the name of the Lord his God, wave his hand over the spot and cure me of my leprosy. Are not Abna and Pharpar, the rivers of Damascus, better than any of the waters in Israel? Couldn't I wash in them and be clean? So he turned and went off in a rage. Naaman's servants went to him and said, My father, if the prophet had told you to do something great, would you not have done it? How much more then when he tells you, simply wash and be cleansed? So he, Naaman, went down and dipped himself in the Jordan 7 times, as the man of God had told him. And his flesh was restored, and became clean like that of a young boy. Wow. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God for the gift of his word. Lord, take my thoughts and my words. May they be invested with your spirit. May they find their way to ears, minds that can take them in, change hearts. In the meditation, my lips, my mind, be upon everyone's hearts and acceptable to you. And make this iPad work. Thank you, Lord. I want to try this iPad business. I'm trusting. I seem appropriate. Now, the story of Naaman, the leper, deals several things simultaneously. First, Naaman is a Syrian. As I said, that's an enemy. He was not only a Syrian, but he was then a Gentile. And we've talked about Gentiles before. At this point, you all go, ooh. Yeah. He was a Gentile, and not a Jew. Now, the Jews for whom the story was written didn't have much use for the Gentiles. Naaman, however, was not just a Gentile. He was a leper. So he was a loser on 2 accounts. The Jews of Jesus' day would have been just as happy if all of the Syrians, all of the Gentiles were lepers. Charlene read to us this morning when Jesus preached in his hometown of Nazareth, he pointed out that God could have chosen to heal any number of Jews who had leprosy. But he didn't. He chose instead Naaman, Syrian. And to be reminded of this, so incensed the crowd that they drove Jesus out of town, wanting to throw him off a cliff. Now Naaman, he's an interesting person in himself. They said he's the commander of the Syrian army. He led them to victory after victory, but he was a leper. So, watching that white patch of skin grow day by day robbed him of all joy in his victories. On one of the raids, as we read, Naaman's men had captured a young Israelite woman. And Naaman had given her to his wife as a servant. Now the young woman apparently was very well cared for because she cared for her master. She was saying that he should go to her home country where there was, she knew, a prophet who could cure diseases, including leprosy. She must have felt some sympathy for Naaman's wife. Think of this. Leprosy is sort of like Ebola. Now I get the idea. No. With Ebola, you have to be completely separated. And if you come near somebody, they're contaminated, and they could get it. So, some sympathy she must have had for Naaman's wife and children, because he had to be completely separated from them. He couldn't interact, couldn't touch his wife and family. So the servant girl said to Naaman's wife, I wish that my Lord were with the prophet who is in Samaria. Then he would heal him of his leprosy. This young woman, this slave, has trust. Trust in Elisha, who has trust in God. When Naaman heard the servant girl's words, he went to the king of Aram, who was his boss, to get his leave paper signed. He would go to Samaria and find this Elisha. The king not only signed his leave papers, but also wrote a letter of introduction. And he took a large amount of gifts and gold and silver on the way as well. Presented the letter to the king of Israel, who read, Now when this letter has come to you, behold, I have sent Naaman, my servant, to you, that you may heal him of his leprosy. When the king reads this, this king Aram must think that I'm going to cure this Naaman. He has leprosy. I don't know if I want to even be in the same room, but there he is. And now this letter says I'm supposed to cure him? No way I can do that. He has in mind, he's trying to pick a quarrel. Because what happens when I can't cure him and he dies, then they're going to be angry, and then they'll come and invade us again. So he has this all worked out in his mind, and he's just all upset and tears his robes in dismay. What am I going to do? Well, Elisha hears of this. Sends back a message. Why have you torn your clothes? Let him come now to me, and he shall know there is a prophet in Israel. So what happens? Naaman goes to see Elisha. He must have created quite a spectacle. Think about that. He's got his big retinue, he's got these horses, he's got his soldiers with him, he's got all these presents behind him. They're riding through town. Everybody in town would have seen this going on. What did Elisha do? Nothing. Nothing. He didn't pay attention to it. There's nothing. So, Naaman probably would have taken one of his men and had his men go up to the door and taken his butt of a spear and pounded on the door. What did Elisha do? Did he go out and meet him? No. He sends one of his servants. Now that's an interesting story in itself. If you want to read some more stuff, go back into 2 Kings and read starting in verse 15, chapter 5, and see what this servant does. There's a whole big story there too. But that's another sermon. The servant comes with a message. Go and wash in the Jordan 7 times, and your flesh shall come to you again, and you shall be clean. That's it? That's it? I came all this way to go wash in the Jordan? I got rivers back home I could have done that in. Why don't you come out here and do something big? Call on the name of your God. And cure me and make a big spectacle, because I'm a big guy. You know, I'm the commander of this big army. You ought to show me some respect. I get no respect. Well, so what happens? Elisha said, oh, no, Naaman, I'm getting out of here. This is not going down. This is ridiculous. One of the guys in the army, hey, wait, hang on. You know, if he'd asked you to do something big, like, I don't know what big thing you might have done, but if you would have done it, if he'd asked you to do something difficult, wouldn't you have done that? Thought it would cure you? Yeah, probably would have. But this is too simple. This is nothing. Do it anyway. What's it going to hurt? So, Naaman does. He goes out and washes. Naaman then went down and dipped himself 7 times in the Jordan, according to the saying of the man of God. And his flesh was restored like the flesh of a little child. He was clean. Clean! You get that? He was clean! This disease that was going to kill him, he didn't have it anymore. He was restored. He could hug his wife and his children. He could go back to a life that he didn't have, that he knew was vanishing. He was restored. Life was given back to him. It was truly a miracle. Well, when I was preparing this, I was at a point where I was in a conversation with Paul DeYoung. Some of you know Paul. Every once in a while we get into a discussion about various things, and we were having a discussion about Genesis 1. That happens to be what we're studying in one of the Bible studies. And we have some differing views on what might be going on there, and I'm trying to figure this out, of course, from a scientific background, trying to make some sense out of this. And I know that this is the Bible, and it's God's Word, and it's true. I just also know that I don't understand it all. And the things that it might say there, I don't get fully. So we're in conversation trying to figure this out. So when I read this, here's another one of these strange events. The idea of natural laws also came into my mind as we were preparing for the great banquet and the talks that are going on there. There's a talk there about natural and unnatural laws. So I thought about this. God has set forth some natural laws. Law of gravity. Everybody knows that. Law of gravity, natural law. You don't jump off a high building and expect to live unless you have a parachute. And then you use another natural law to counteract the first natural law. You play these two natural laws off each other, you make it. But those are natural laws. One of the fellows in the Great Banquet says, you can't break God's natural laws. You can only break yourself against them. Okay, natural laws. God has set forth natural laws. We've harnessed them. We've learned a lot about them. We're celebrating this month. 50 years ago, we put a man on the moon. We've sent satellites out of our solar system. We've harnessed the natural laws. We can understand them and apply them. That's true. But God has also set forth unnatural laws. There's nothing natural about God's requiring Naaman to go and wash himself 7 times in the Jordan. That just is not a natural way to do it. This is something that he had to simply do, trust, and obey. And when he obeyed, what happened? He was healed. He was healed. Lots of times I was thinking about it. One of them comes to mind, of course, is Moses. What's natural about putting your arm out and saying, okay, walk across the dry land here? Oh, wait a minute, there's a river. No. And it parts. And the Israelites walk across on dry land. There's nothing natural about that. That's amazing. Well, I try to find it. Look, you see some. Gideon, send home 99% of your soldiers and win the battle, which is the remaining few. There's nothing natural about that. But he doesn't. He trusted and he obeyed, just as Moses trusted and obey. Love your enemies. Now, wait a minute. Wait a minute. There's nothing natural about that. That's what Jesus says. That's what God says. Love your enemies. Tithe and receive a blessing. What a natural result. I call these unnatural laws because they require us to suspend our scientific approach. Obeying God, we cannot expect any kind of return or payoff. They call for radical obedience. Obedience when it just doesn't make sense. We still do it. Like sitting up here waiting to pour something on my head. Radical obedience. Okay? There may be an explanation. Yeah. I don't believe that God suspends his natural laws, but he manipulates them to achieve his ends. That's where the miracle lies. He manipulates, for me, I understand, he manipulates the natural laws to achieve spectacular results. But I also know that there are some things I just don't understand. How is it a bumblebee can fly? That's just not natural. But it does. What appears to be completely impossible is fully possible and factual. So here's an assignment for you. If you have access to a computer, Google quantum entanglement. Or what Einstein called spooky action at a distance. Spooky action at a distance. Totally cannot possibly be. Look them up. You'll enjoy it. There are lots of little videos about it as well. Things that just cannot be, but are. So I know that I don't know enough about the natural laws to say what's possible and what's impossible. Now, what appears to be impossible may in fact be possible. I'm not going to say that God doesn't know how to do what looks to me like something impossible. It just looks to me like it's impossible. I'll trust and obey. Because I didn't make the laws. He did. And he knows. He knows how to use them. I read a story. It tells about how God rewards generously those who trust and obey. Learning to trust, learning to obey. This is what Charles Swindoll said about a missionary lady who was sitting at her window. She opened her mail. In one letter, she found a crisp, new $10 bill. She was pleasantly surprised, but then noticed outside the window a poorly dressed stranger leaning on the post by her window. She couldn't get him off her mind, so thinking that he might be in greater need than she put the $10 bill in an envelope and on it wrote, "Don't despair," and gave the envelope to the man through the window. He read the note, tipped his hat, was off. Next day, knock at the door. You see what's coming? There was the man. He handed her $60. $60? Yes, lady. Don't despair. Paid 5 to 1. Now, I'm not going to tell you that God pays off 5 to 1, but he does pay off generously. He pays off generously. If you obey, he will bless you with many blessings. As many of you can attest, I've heard those stories. I know that God generously blesses you when you obey. If you give God the gift of your life, he will return even greater gifts to you. He will reward you, as it says in Luke, with good measure, pressed down and shaken together. Yes, indeed. Here again the word of God. Then Naaman went down and dipped himself 7 times in the Jordan, according to the saying of the man of God. And his flesh was restored like the flesh of a little child, and he was clean. That's what God did for Naaman when he trusted and obeyed. Trust and obey, and God will do great things for you. Amen.